Warning disclaimer: the story is a fictionalized retelling inspired by real historical figures, places, and events surrounding the world of country music, especially the life and legacy of Hank Williams. While elements of the story draw on true historical context, ghostly occurrences, supernatural incidents, and paranormal events are crafted for entertainment purposes. This is not a factual account, but rather a chilling, suspenseful journey into the myths and legends that haunt the heart of Nashville. Listener discretion is advised, especially for those sensitive to themes involving spirits, death, and the unknown. Nashville, Tennessee. To most, it's the home of country music, a city where neon lights glow along Broadway, where cowboy boots click against wooden dance floors, and where dreamers chase the echo of legendary voices that came before them. But beneath the twang of guitars and the applause of sold-out crowds, there's another sound that some claim to hear. A softer, colder whisper. One that weaves through the alleys of Music Row and lingers in the shadows backstage at the Ryman Auditorium. Nashville isn't just a city of dreams. It's a city of ghosts. Ask any longtime local and they'll tell you Nashville's got stories. Stories of singers who never made it home, of instruments that strum themselves late at night, of dressing rooms that grow icy cold without warning. The Grand Ole Opry, that sacred hall where country legends were born, is said to host more than just living talent. Visitors report phantom footsteps, laughter in empty corridors, and the feeling of being watched from the wings. Even skeptics admit there's something about that place, something that clings to the curtains, the rafters, the old wooden boards. Something that refuses to move on. Of all the spirits said to haunt Nashville, none are whispered about more than Hank Williams. The hillbilly Shakespeare. The troubled genius. The voice that helped define an entire genre, and the ghost many believe never truly left. Hank's legacy is etched into the very soul of the city, but it's not just his music people talk about. It's his presence, his shadow, his unfinished business. Some say Hank Williams was too big, too broken, too brilliant to be confined by death. After all, his life was a storm of talent and tragedy. Fame hit him fast and hard, and so did the demons, alcohol, heartbreak, addiction. He died young, at just 29, in the backseat of a powder blue Cadillac on his way to a New Year's Day concert in 1953. But some say he never made it to the other side. Not fully. Over the decades, his spirit has become folklore in Nashville. Musicians claim to feel cold air rush past them while rehearsing his songs. Staff at old studios say they hear humming through the walls, his voice unmistakable. Even tourists have reported strange occurrences at the Hank Williams Museum and nearby hotels, lights flickering, radios turning on by themselves, and a feeling of sorrow that settles deep in the bones. Not fear exactly, but something older, sadder. Like a song stuck on repeat. And it's not just about Hank. Nashville is thick with ghost stories. There's the tale of a forgotten backup singer who vanished mid-tour, last seen backstage in a mirror's reflection. A janitor who swears he heard applause at 2 a.m. in an empty theater. A producer who burned an unreleased demo tape, only to find the same song playing in his car the next morning, scratched and distorted, but real. Or real enough. Every brick of this city seems to carry a verse, a memory, or a scream. Tourists come for the honky-tonks in history, but some leave with chills they can't explain. Others come specifically to seek out the paranormal. Haunted pub crawls. Ghost tours of historic venues. EVP sessions in studios that haven't seen a live recording in decades. They say the music never really dies in Nashville. And maybe neither do the artists. This story begins here, in this city of shadows and songs, where legends like Hank Williams are immortal not just in memory or vinyl, but perhaps in a more literal, more chilling way. What happens when talent burns so brightly it scorches the soul? What remains when the applause ends, but the artist isn't ready to leave? Let's go deeper into the darkness behind the music. Into the places where the curtain never quite falls. And where Hank Williams, perhaps, still walks. It was supposed to be a new beginning. December 31st, 1952, Hank Williams, already a country legend at only 29, was set to perform in Canton, Ohio, for a highly anticipated New Year's Day concert. Despite his recent health issues and a painful history of addiction, fans were still hungry for his voice, raw, trembling, and timeless. But Hank never made it to the stage. Somewhere along a cold, winding road between Knoxville and Oak Hill, West Virginia, the man known as the Hillbilly Shakespeare took his final breath in the back seat of a Cadillac. The official cause of death was heart failure, but the story surrounding that final ride has always felt incomplete. His driver that night was a young college student named Charles Carr, just 17 years old, hired to escort the singer to his performance. According to Carr, Hank was already looking weak and pale when they left Knoxville. He lay in the back seat, under blankets, barely speaking. The weather was terrible. A snowstorm blanketed the roads. Flights had been grounded, so driving was their only option. Carr stopped occasionally to grab food or check on his passenger, but sometime during that long, frigid night, Hank slipped away. Or so the story goes. The mystery begins with the inconsistencies in the timeline. Some reports suggest Hank had already been dead for hours before they reached Oak Hill. Others claim Carr didn't realize he was gone until he tried to wake him for breakfast. Even stranger were the sightings, yes, sightings, that trickled in days after his death. People swore they saw Hank wandering around rest stops, diners, or gas stations along the route. A waitress in Bristol claimed he ordered coffee at 4 a.m. A trucker reported picking up a hitchhiker in a white cowboy hat who vanished from his rig before reaching Virginia. Each witness was dismissed as confused or lying. But their stories never wavered. Then came the reports from Canton itself. Local stagehands at the venue where Hank was set to perform swore they heard footsteps pacing backstage before the concert was canceled. Microphones picked up static that sounded eerily like someone tuning a guitar. One technician, who worked that fateful show for decades, insisted until the day he died that the curtain moved on its own, as if someone had peeked out at the crowd. The Cadillac Hank died in became a point of obsession for collectors. It changed hands multiple times, and every owner reported strange occurrences. Radios switching stations on their own, a lingering scent of whiskey and cologne, cold spots in the back seat, even moments where country music played despite the engine being off. One Nashville museum that briefly displayed the vehicle removed it after staff experienced repeated power failures and unexplained voices during the night shift. One cleaner resigned after claiming a man in a cowboy hat whispered her name. Some believe Hank's spirit never left that car. That the Cadillac, which carried both his fame and his fate, became a vessel for something trapped between life and death. Others think it wasn't the car, but the road itself. That stretch of highway, winding through the Appalachian dark, holds something ancient and unknowable. Hank's final ride may have passed through more than just snow and mountains. It may have passed through a threshold. There are musicians, real ones, touring artists with no time for ghost stories, who refuse to drive that route, even today. They take detours. They don't talk about it publicly, but among themselves, they swap tales of sleepless nights, empty eyes in the rearview mirror, and a haunting voice that sometimes sings along to the radio when Hank Williams songs are playing. The most unsettling account came from a man named Jeff Daniels, not the actor, but a tour manager from the 80s, who was driving a young country band through the area. As they passed Oak Hill, their van stalled without warning. No signal, no power. They waited hours in the freezing dark. Then, out of nowhere, the cassette player came on. It was Hank's Lost Highway. No one had put it in. And no one ever owned the tape. Jeff never toured again. The legend of Hank Williams' final ride has grown with every retelling. Some say it's just myth, built by fans who couldn't let go. Others swear they've felt it, seen it, heard it. Whatever the truth, one thing remains: Hank never made it to that stage in Ohio. But maybe, just maybe, he's still trying to get there. The Ryman Auditorium is hallowed ground in the world of country music. Nestled in the heart of downtown Nashville, its red brick facade and iconic stained glass windows conceal a history that is both majestic and unsettling. Often called the Mother Church of country music, it once housed the Grand Ole Opry for more than 3 decades. Legends like Johnny Cash, Patsy Cline, and, of course, Hank Williams walked its sacred stage. But as many performers and staff will tell you, it's not just memories that linger inside the Ryman. It's voices, footsteps, a presence that turns even the loudest applause into a chilling silence. They say the Ryman comes alive at night, not with music, but with echoes. Stagehands have long spoken of hearing whispered conversations in empty dressing rooms, lights flickering when no one is near the switch, and doors creaking open slowly as if someone unseen has just entered. Even skeptics find it hard to brush off the feeling of being watched while walking alone through the darkened corridors. Some of them say it feels like someone's waiting to go on stage, but never gets the cue. And then there's the legend of the cowboy in the shadows. Several performers over the years have described a similar sighting, a tall man in an old-fashioned suit, boots tapping lightly against the wooden floor, a white Stetson tilted low over his face. He never speaks, never moves quickly. He simply appears in the wings or among the pews as the auditorium sleeps. When spotted, he vanishes in the blink of an eye. Some believe it's the spirit of Hank Williams, still drawn to the place where his voice rang like a bell through the southern air. Others think it's a residual haunting, Hank reliving the nights he stood in the spotlight, unable to leave the stage behind. In the early 2000s, a well-known singer, who later asked not to be named, had a disturbing encounter during a late-night soundcheck. Alone with only a single technician in the building, she reported hearing someone humming behind her. When she turned, there was no one. But the microphone, though unplugged, began to crackle. A man's voice whispered, "Sing it again." The technician quit the next morning. The singer never returned to the Ryman without a full entourage. Tour guides, too, have their stories. One longtime guide named Barbara recalls giving a tour to a small group during a rainy afternoon. As she stood near the back of the auditorium, explaining the significance of Hank Williams' final performance at the Ryman, a young girl in the group tugged at her sleeve and said, "Who's the man on stage?" Barbara turned to look, but there was no one there. The girl insisted. She described a man in a hat, holding a guitar. "He was just watching us," she whispered. "I think he was sad." And perhaps the most compelling story came from a janitor named Earl, who worked at the Ryman for over 20 years. Earl was a no-nonsense kind of man, someone who believed in elbow grease and not much else. But one night, as he mopped the stage floor alone, he claimed to hear music playing softly. The strange part? No instruments were in the building. No speakers were powered on. Yet the melody was clear, "I'm so lonesome I could cry." The song grew louder, and then the lights above the stage flickered to full brightness. Earl turned and saw the faint outline of a man at center stage, guitar in hand. He dropped his mop and ran. He never cleaned that stage again. Despite the growing number of eerie encounters, the Ryman remains a pilgrimage site for country music fans. Some say the ghosts are part of its magic, that the spirits of artists who poured their souls out on that stage were never able to completely leave. For many, Hank Williams represents the tragic soul of country music. His pain, passion, and poetry etched into every creaky board of the Ryman floor. To this day, during special tribute nights or anniversary concerts, sound engineers occasionally report microphone interference when Hank songs are performed, despite flawless checks before the show. Some artists even claim to feel a strange warmth or shiver when they sing his name. The Ryman Auditorium is no ordinary venue. It's a time capsule, a shrine, a whispering relic where music and the supernatural intertwine. And if you find yourself there alone one night, pause before you walk on stage. You might not be the only one waiting in the wings. Music Row in Nashville is the soul of American country music. A stretch of quiet streets lined with historic homes turned recording studios, this part of the city is where countless legends were born. Behind the closed doors of these unassuming buildings, some of the greatest hits in history were recorded, and musical dreams were both realized and shattered. But one studio, tucked between taller, flashier buildings, has long stood empty. Faded paint peels from its porch, vines creep through broken window panes, and a rusty for-lease sign hangs crookedly near the door. Locals whisper about it, but no one will say its name out loud. It's known only as the Old Studio, and rumor has it Hank Williams once recorded there. Or maybe something else did. The legend begins in the early 1950s, shortly before Hank's death. Records show he made a surprise visit to a small, privately owned studio, unlisted, unnamed, and completely off the books. He was said to be chasing a sound no one else could hear. According to a surviving engineer, Hank arrived with red eyes, mumbling lyrics he scribbled on napkins. The session reportedly went on until dawn, and what they recorded that night was never released. The master tapes vanished, and the engineer disappeared a week later. The building was sold, boarded up, and left untouched for decades. Until a young, ambitious indie band stumbled upon it in 2011. They weren't after fame, they were after authenticity. Obsessed with classic country sound, they believed the best way to capture it was to record in the same space as the legends. When they found the abandoned studio on Music Row, it felt like fate. The place was dusty, moldy, and half falling apart, but the acoustics were incredible. The walls still held sound. It echoed, vibrated, hummed, like the place itself wanted to sing again. From the moment they stepped in, strange things began happening. Instruments went out of tune instantly. Cables tangled by themselves. Voices bled into recordings, whispers layered under vocals, even when no one was near a mic. At first, they dismissed it as old wiring or interference. But things escalated. During one session, the lead singer started playing an unfamiliar melody, something sad, haunting. The band followed instinctively, not even sure what they were playing. When they played it back, the room fell silent. Beneath their voices was a second singer, a deep, weary voice, layered perfectly in harmony. They never recorded it. They didn't know how it got there. And none of them had sung that part. The next few nights became a blur of sleepless recording sessions. The band grew agitated, paranoid. One member claimed he saw a man standing behind the drum kit in the dark, but when he turned on the light, there was no one. Another swore they heard someone whispering through the air vents, lyrics from "I'll Never Get Out of This World Alive." The lights would flicker in rhythm with their songs, and the mixing board would randomly isolate tracks they never recorded. Eventually, they tried to leave. But the studio didn't want them to. The exit door jammed. Phones lost signal. Every attempt to transfer their files to a hard drive failed, each time corrupted, wiped, or filled with static. Their final night inside was the worst. They had just finished what they called the ghost song, a track they claimed wrote itself. As they listened back, the studio grew unnaturally cold. The amps roared, though nothing was plugged in. And in the silence before the final chorus, they heard it clearly, a voice, not theirs, singing, "I'm coming home." The band fled. They left everything, guitars, mics, recordings. To this day, they refuse to speak publicly about what happened. The studio sits vacant once again, untouched. No real estate agent can sell it. Every attempt to renovate ends in disaster, power tools fail, workers quit, and once, a construction manager reportedly collapsed after claiming he felt something crawl through him. Old-timers say Hank Williams put something into that room, his grief, his madness, maybe his soul. Or perhaps it's not even Hank. Perhaps it's something else, something drawn to his music. Something that waits in the dark for someone else to pick up the mic. One Nashville sound engineer, after sneaking in out of curiosity, left with only this to say, "There's still music in that place. But it's not meant for the living." She was barely 22 when she arrived in Nashville with a guitar, a suitcase, and a head full of Hank Williams lyrics. Her name was Lily Grant, a quiet girl from Kentucky with a voice like honey and sorrow. She didn't have a record deal or even an agent. Just the determination to sing on the same stages as her heroes. She spent her days waitressing downtown and her nights performing at open mics, chasing the same old dream every newcomer brought to Music City. But what happened to her one night inside the Grand Ole Opry would stay with her forever and would change her path in a way no manager or hit song ever could. It was a Tuesday evening, just after midnight, when Lily found herself walking past the Grand Ole Opry house. The building was closed, locked tight after hours, but she loved strolling by it. She said it gave her hope to look at that glowing marquee and imagine her name up there someday. That night, though, something felt different. She paused at the back gate, humming softly to herself when she saw the door to the side stage slightly ajar. It was never open. Never. Curiosity, or maybe something deeper, urged her forward. She stepped inside. The interior was dark, lit only by the faint glow of emergency lights. But the atmosphere felt warm, almost welcoming, like stepping into a memory. Lily moved through the narrow halls, past framed photos of legends long gone. Then, from the stage, she heard something, a guitar chord. One single, perfect chord. She should have run. But she didn't. She walked toward the source of the sound, every step echoing on the polished floor. As she reached the edge of the stage, she saw him. A man sat alone on a stool at center stage, strumming softly. He wore a light-colored suit, boots worn from travel, and a white Stetson hat pulled low over his brow. His face was shadowed, but something about him felt familiar. Like a photo you've seen your whole life, finally stepping into the real world. He looked up at her, not startled, just calm, and said, "You sing." Lily nodded, her mouth dry, heart thundering. "Then come on," he said, his voice slow and southern. "Let's sing something true." Without thinking, she walked out to the stool next to his and took it. The guitar now rested in her lap, though she didn't remember picking it up. She played a few notes and felt her fingers move with a kind of ease she'd never known before. The chords poured out of her. Then her voice followed. She sang Hank's "I'm so lonesome I could cry," but it didn't sound like her voice at all. It was older, sadder, wiser. The man in the hat didn't sing along. He just smiled. When the last note faded into silence, he looked at her and said, "That's the sound that don't die." Then, slowly, he tipped his hat and vanished. Just like that. Lily sat frozen, still gripping the guitar. When she came to her senses, the stage was dark again. Empty. No guitar. No stool. Just a cold chill hanging in the air. She ran. For days, she told no one. She thought she had imagined it, or that she had dreamed it all. But everything felt different after that. Her voice had changed richer, with a melancholic edge she'd never had before. She began writing songs that felt like they came from another time, another place. When she sang them at open mics, people wept. Agents started noticing her. Producers asked where she'd trained. Her rise was fast and undeniable. But Lily always said she didn't do it alone. Years later, during a radio interview, a host asked her who her greatest influence was. Without hesitation, she said, "Hank Williams." The host smiled. "He would have been proud of you." Lily paused and looked straight into the microphone. "He already told me he was." The station played it off as a metaphor, a poetic tribute. But those close to her, those who knew the full story, swore it was the truth. And if you ask Lily today about that night, she won't deny it. She just smiles and says, "Sometimes the Grand Ole Opry opens its doors for ghosts. And sometimes, they let you sing with them." There's a strange radio signal that only a few people in the Nashville area claim to have heard, a signal that drifts in like fog around 3 a.m., when the streets are quiet and the air feels heavier than usual. It doesn't last long, maybe 4 or 5 minutes. But those who catch it never forget it. It always plays the same song, "I'm so lonesome I could cry," performed in a version no one can trace. It's not Hank's original recording. It's slower, sadder. The vocals strained with pain so deep it's almost inhuman. And woven into the static beneath the song is something else. Breathing. Whispers. A voice softly saying, "Still here." It began as an urban legend among long-haul truckers and insomniac musicians. They called it the Midnight Broadcast. At first, it was just a creepy rumor, something people joked about on forums or mentioned in hushed tones at dive bars. But then came the recordings. In 2014, a local amateur radio enthusiast named Mark Ellison claimed to have picked up the mystery transmission on his ham radio. He recorded a short clip and uploaded it online. At first, people assumed it was a hoax. But audio experts who analyzed it found no digital tampering. The voice wasn't manipulated. The static wasn't artificial. In fact, the signal seemed to originate from an old analog broadcast band that hadn't been used in decades. Then someone noticed something else, something far more chilling. The station ID embedded in the background static identified the source as WC-Men, a call sign for a small AM radio station that shut down in the early 1950s. A station that just happened to be part of Hank Williams' last promotional tour before his death. Now people began to take the story seriously. Paranormal investigators from across the country tried to track the signal. Every attempt to pinpoint its source failed. The location would jump from East Nashville to the rural edges of Franklin County, sometimes bouncing as far as the Tennessee-Kentucky border. But always at 3 a.m. And always with that same lonely tune. A few audio engineers claim the song changes ever so slightly depending on the listener. One woman said she heard the words, "Don't forget me," whispered before the final verse. A man in Memphis swore he heard footsteps on hardwood between the notes. Another claimed the song played for 7 minutes straight, and when it ended, the name Hiram, Hank's birth name, was softly spoken. His radio caught fire immediately after. People tried to debunk it. Some said it was a pirate radio station run by pranksters. Others claimed it was a freak signal bounce caused by atmospheric conditions. But no one could explain why the signal only played one song, or how different listeners heard different things buried beneath it. In 2017, a country music historian named Olivia Reeves became obsessed with the broadcast. She spent weeks tracing Hank's final tour route and overlaid it with recorded locations of the mystery signal. The pattern was undeniable. It followed his last known path from Montgomery to Oak Hill. Reeves even discovered old maps showing the now-defunct WC-Men radio tower just off a forgotten dirt road near Pulaski, Tennessee. She visited the site. The tower was long gone, reduced to rusted metal and overgrown weeds. But her recorder picked up something strange while she stood in the field: distant guitar chords. A voice, off-key but familiar, humming the first few bars of "I Saw the Light." Olivia fainted on the spot. When she woke, her recorder was still running. The tape hissed, the background full of what sounded like applause. Today, the midnight broadcast remains an unexplained phenomenon. It doesn't happen every night, only on certain dates, usually around anniversaries tied to Hank's life or death. No one has been able to predict it accurately, and recordings continue to vanish mysteriously from hard drives, tapes, even cloud backups. Some say it's a message from beyond. That Hank Williams never stopped performing. That he found a way to reach the living through the thing he loved most, his music. Others believe the song itself is cursed, and anyone who hears it too clearly never sleeps the same again. They wake up humming it, dream about it, feel compelled to follow that signal deeper into the static. If you're ever awake at 3 a.m. in Tennessee and your radio crackles to life, listen carefully. But be warned. Some songs aren't meant for the living. And some broadcasts never die. In the world of country music, guitars are more than just instruments. They're sacred relics. They carry songs, pain, joy, and sometimes something darker. There's one particular guitar that Nashville whispers about. Not because of who plays it, but because of what happens when someone does. They say it once belonged to Hank Williams himself, though no official record confirms it. A sunburst acoustic with faded frets and a small engraving inside the sound hole, HW. 1952, it's become known as the possessed guitar, and those who've played it swear it's not just haunted, it's hungry. The story begins in the late 1970s when the guitar surfaced at a pawn shop in Alabama. A man in his 50s sold it for next to nothing, claiming he didn't want it in the house anymore. He didn't leave his name. The shop owner recognized the age and craftsmanship immediately, labeling it a rare collector's item. It sat on display for months until a young local singer named Cody Bell came in and asked to try it out. From the moment Cody touched the strings, the room changed. The air went still. Customers in the store said the boy played with a depth and sorrow no one had heard from him before. He wasn't an experienced guitarist, yet his fingers moved with eerie confidence. He played Lost Highway, a Hank Williams classic, and when he hit the final chord, the guitar's body vibrated like it had a heartbeat. Cody left with the instrument that day, paying with every dime he had. That's when the nightmares began. Cody told friends that each time he fell asleep, he heard footsteps pacing near his bed, followed by a faint, tuneless humming. Sometimes, he'd wake up holding the guitar, even if he'd stored it across the room. During the day, he became obsessed with Hank's music, writing lyrics that mirrored his sadness and style so perfectly it felt like they'd been pulled from a different era. People loved it. His popularity surged. He was booked for small shows across Tennessee, always bringing the haunted guitar with him. And with each performance, something in Cody began to slip. He stopped sleeping, stopped eating. One bandmate claimed Cody would stare at the mirror for hours, strumming the guitar slowly, mumbling lyrics he hadn't written. He spoke less, his eyes glassy and distant. He insisted that Hank was speaking through the strings. When others tried to touch the guitar, he grew violent. Once, at a bar gig in Murfreesboro, he screamed at a fan for getting too close to it. After that, his friends staged an intervention, but Cody vanished before they could reach him. He was last seen on stage in a dimly lit club off Interstate 24. Witnesses say he played a song no one had ever heard before, slow, mournful, and almost unbearable in its sadness. As the final note faded, the lights flickered. A power outage hit the building for exactly 8 seconds. When the lights came back on, Cody was gone. Only the guitar remained, propped gently against the microphone stand. The guitar passed through hands after that, musicians, collectors, historians, all drawn to its legend. Some held it only once before locking it away. Others attempted to record with it, only to find strange voices in their playback, or strings snapping without cause. One artist claimed he blacked out while strumming it and awoke miles from home with dirt under his fingernails and no memory of how he got there. Today, the possessed guitar is stored in a temperature-controlled vault beneath a private museum in Nashville. It is not on public display. The curator, an elderly woman who refuses to speak to press, once told a researcher that guitar has Hank's soul. Or maybe just his pain. Paranormal investigators have tried to examine it. Every attempt failed, cameras malfunctioned, batteries drained instantly, and one psychic collapsed upon entering the room. Her only words before being taken to the hospital were, "He's still playing. Still looking for an audience." Many believe that the guitar was never just an instrument. That Hank Williams, in his final days, poured something into it, grief, regret, maybe even a desperate plea to be remembered. Others believe it's a cursed relic, absorbing the energy of every soul who touches it, feeding off their sorrow and echoing Hank's eternal loneliness. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain. If you ever come across a sunburst acoustic with HW 1952 etched inside, don't play it. Not unless you're ready to lose more than just your voice. There's a small, historic hotel on the edge of downtown Nashville, tucked between modern condos and busy bars. It's the kind of place most tourists overlook, modest signage, no flashy lights, just an old charm preserved in polished wood floors and velvet drapes. But for those who know its history, it holds a far greater legacy than any five-star resort. Hank Williams stayed here once, in the winter of 1952, just weeks before his death. And some say, he never truly checked out. Room 209 is the one people whisper about. Staff members won't assign it unless specifically requested. Housekeepers rotate shifts to avoid spending too much time alone on that floor. Even the manager, a hardened woman who's worked there for over 30 years, admits that strange things happen inside that room. The temperature drops without reason. The lights flicker, even after multiple rewiring attempts. And then there's the humming. Every few weeks, a guest reports hearing someone hum softly from inside the walls. It's never loud, but distinct. Melancholy. Like someone tuning a guitar with no strings or a voice caught between dimensions. The song is always the same, "I'm so lonesome I could cry." No radio, no phone, no hallway speaker. Just that slow, haunting tune, echoing from nowhere. In 2018, a paranormal investigator named Sarah Klein booked room 209 under a false name, hoping to capture evidence of what many believed to be Hank Williams' lingering spirit. She brought EMF meters, voice recorders, thermal cameras, and infrared sensors. On her first night, nothing happened. But on the second, things changed. Around 2:46 a.m., her recorder picked up the sound of footsteps pacing above her room, despite being on the top floor. A minute later, her EMF reader spiked violently, then died. She checked her thermal camera and saw, for a brief moment, the outline of a figure sitting on the corner of the bed. Wide-brimmed hat. Boots. Shoulders hunched. She didn't sleep the rest of the night. But what happened the next morning truly unnerved her. Across the room's antique mirror, written in the condensation left by the hotel's faulty heating system, was a short phrase, "Still singin'." She shared her findings online, and while skeptics dismissed it as a publicity stunt, several hotel employees came forward with their own experiences. One man, an overnight security guard, said he once saw a figure walking down the hallway past 2 a.m. He wasn't moving right, the guard said. Like he was gliding, not walking. And I swear to you, he tipped his hat to me. Then just disappeared into the corner wall. Another employee, a receptionist named Mel, recalled getting a phone call from room 209 one night, despite the room being unoccupied. When she answered, all she heard was static, followed by a faint voice whispering, "Where's my show?" Even guests unaware of the room's reputation have reported feeling uneasy, some waking up to find the television on, playing black and white footage of a man singing into an old microphone. Others describe dreams so vivid they feel real, standing on a stage, unable to see the audience, while a man in a shadowed cowboy hat watches from the wings. The hotel now embraces the legend, though carefully. They never use Hank's name officially, but locals know. The spirit that never left isn't just a ghost, it's the soul of country music's greatest tragedy. A man who burned too fast, loved too hard, and sang with a pain so real it never died. Some say Hank Williams never got to finish his final tour. That his passion, his loneliness, and his longing to be remembered were too powerful to fade. So he lingers in radio waves, in old guitars, in hotel rooms where he once laid his head and dreamed of applause. Not angry, not malicious, just present. And if you ever find yourself in room 209, unable to sleep, listen closely. You might hear the soft shuffle of boots on hardwood, a sigh, a string's faint twang. And if the mirror fogs, don't be afraid. Just know, Hank's still here. Still waiting for the spotlight. Still singin'. 71.